Where will the top NFL free agents sign this off season? Welcome, football fans, to part 2 of the Bottom Line Views NFL free agency predictions. In this video, I'm discussing the next 30 best free agents and their landing spots. If that sounds good, spike the like button and don't forget to subscribe for NFL free agency coverage like no other channel on the internet. The only reason you're getting this video is because of you guys. Spiking the like button 100 times on part 1. If you want a part 3 featuring the bargain free agents of 2025, 100 likes. And I'll make sure to release that before March 10th. Okay, let's get to it. Let's begin with the running back position. For part 2 of my free agency predictions, a surprise, a shocker to start it off for Sean Payton. That is the Denver Broncos signing a running back, Najee Harris of the Pittsburgh Steelers. What I thought of here is the fit in Denver. Javonte Williams is a free agent. First and second down power back is what they wanted Javonte to be. And I understand they drafted Audric Estime. I think it was a 5th round pick. I don't think that's a huge investment. He's more seen as their 3rd running back on their depth chart. McLaughlin, that change of pace, maybe a little bit of a pass catcher variety. But Najee can do it all. He can pass protect. He can catch the football. And he's excellent on first and second down in between the tackles. Plus, in Denver, it would be the best offensive line, the best offensive scheme that Najee's ever been in. Plus, he's in his prime. So this would be an excellent signing for Denver to pair with Bo Nix in the backfield and give them a guy that's going to pick up the tough yards in between the tackles, a guy that can play on all 3 downs, a guy that was at Alabama, just like Mark Ingram for Sean Payton once upon a time. So I like Najee here to the Broncos. The second running back is J.K. Dobbins. I think he'll stay put in Los Angeles with the Chargers. He was just a great fit. He's always been a great fit for Greg Roman's offense. I felt like he had such a resurgent, awesome story last season, and I don't see why that would change. I don't see why they would move off of him. Maybe they add a complement or they add another running back on top of Dobbins, but it wouldn't make much sense to not bring him back considering how good he was when he was on the field and how productive he was for their running game early in the season, late in the season, whenever he took the field for them. So he was a big difference maker. Like when he was on the field or off the field, they saw significant changes in their efficiencies running the football. So I think Dobbins definitely sticks around because he's comfortable in that system. Roman likes him a lot. And I feel like Harbaugh really got to know him well. So I think they're going to keep him there. And I think he's going to continue to bolt up in Los Angeles. The third running back is where we're going to start an interesting discussion about partnering players up. And that is Aaron Jones. I have Aaron Jones signing with the Las Vegas Raiders because, guys, I'm all in on this idea. I did predict Aaron Rodgers to go to the Raiders, so why not? Let's just make the Green Bay Packers from 2020. Aaron Jones is going to the Raiders too because they need a running back, obviously, right? I think you could see Zamir White compliment Aaron Jones as the power to the lightning, like the A.J. Dillon type of guy, right? You could also see Sincere McCormick get involved as well. But with Chip Kelly there, he wants a running back that can fly. He wants a running back that's going to be good as a pass catcher, that can be involved in the screen game. Aaron Jones is perfect. And he's still really productive. Last year in Minnesota, I thought he was one of the most underrated backs in football still. And if they do bring in Aaron Rodgers, there's no running back he would rather have than Aaron Jones. So you'll get him cheap too, probably a 1-year contract. So this would be excellent for the Raiders if they do go down the Aaron Rodgers path. He could return to Minnesota too, but I wanted to be sexy with my selection, just as I am here with Davante Adams signing with the Las Vegas Raiders, guys. I had to wait for part 2 because I needed to wait for Davante Adams to hit the open market. And Davante Adams, I still think is really good at football. Like, out of all the receivers in this video, out of all the receivers available, you could argue Adams would be the best option because you don't have to trade for him and he's still playing at a number 1 wide receiver clip. He's not quite as good as he used to be. Not really close to his peak powers, but still darn good. Great route runner, especially at the intermediate level, great red zone presence, and if he is partnered up with Aaron Rodgers, their chemistry is out of this world. It's all-time special, so yeah, a return to the Raiders would make a lot of sense for Adams. He would only have really left for half a season, so that's pretty cool. I mean, so Davante Adams to the Raiders, returning. He also looked sweet in that uniform. He had a great aesthetic going in the silver and black. The next wide receiver is Amari Cooper, who's going to leave the Bills. I don't think they'll re-sign him, and I think he'll go to Baltimore, the team that the Bills defeated in the divisional round. I actually really like this fit for Lamar Jackson. It adds a perimeter wide receiver that can still get down the field and get vertical and win on the outside and could be a savvy route runner. And I feel like with Zay Flowers as their number one, with the mismatch that is Isaiah Likely, with the threat of their running game and Derrick Henry, if you have Amari Cooper as your number 2 or number 3 option, like basically a 2B along with Rashad Bateman as perimeter wide receivers, you've got a pretty good mixture of route running promise, quickness, speed, size, like a good little combination of a wide receiver room. And I feel like with Cooper being the signing, it could move Zay Flowers more into the slot when they go to 3 wide receiver sets and have him play less on the outside. That would even allow him to thrive even more with Nelson Aguilar moving on somewhere else or potentially signing as their 4th receiver. But yeah, Amari Cooper, I could see as a fit here in Baltimore. I think he really enjoyed playing in a winning culture in Buffalo, and I think he would want to go to a contending team like the Ravens. And I do think they're going to get a receiver. I just don't think it's going to be like a DK Metcalf, Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins level name and contract. I think it's going to be a solid veteran player that can contribute, that can add a layer to their offense, like being a perimeter player that can get down the field, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be a back-breaking or more so bank-breaking move. So I like Cooper to the Ravens. Next up, Hollywood Brown, a former Raven, is going to sign with the Bills. This one is a connection. Although I wanted Hollywood desperately, I wanted to say Hollywood to Hollywood. Like I really wanted to predict him to go to the Rams and the Chargers. And I guess, guys, if I didn't have more integrity to my predictions, I would have done it just for the sake of the video. But I like Brown to the Bills. So the alliteration still stands. But I will say, I like Brown to the Bills because Josh Allen apparently really likes him. And if Josh Allen really likes him, I don't think that Mr. Bean is going to say no. We've heard some rumors floated out there. I also like his dimension within the offense. They do need a guy that can get vertical and can really run. And that's certainly the case with Hollywood, where he was kind of miscast and misused in Kansas City to a certain degree. He did show flashes, though, at the end of the season with the Chiefs that he could still play at a pretty high level, at least be like a number 2 quality wide receiver. He can play outside or inside in an offense. He's played both throughout the majority of his career. Like he's played in the slot in Arizona or he's played out wide in Baltimore. Like he's played a lot of different places, Kansas City, kind of moving all around. So he can be kind of interchangeable along with guys like Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, and Coleman. So I could see Hollywood just fulfilling a unique niche in the offense, which is a vertical receiver for them that they don't really have. So I could see this being a good fit. Next up, our lone tight end for this video, Mike Gesicki, who I thought was extremely awesome for Cincinnati last year in more than a few outings. And Gesicki showcased what I always thought about him. Like, he's been really good in Miami throughout his career, kind of had a little bit of a slump for a couple years with both the Dolphins and the Patriots. But then in Cincinnati, man, whenever T. Higgins wasn't on the field, or sometimes even when he was, this guy was thriving, converting third downs, being a mismatch weapon in the slot, and just overall being dangerous for Joe Burrow. So I think they'll retain him because he was excellent for them. That's exactly what they're looking for at tight end. A move tight end that can run routes, that can separate, that can win in the red zone and on third down. And man, he was awesome. So yeah, I think they're going to keep him. The Patriots need a tackle, and I did suggest that Jackson in part 1 of the Rams could be signed by the Patriots. He obviously re-signed to the Rams, so this kind of correlates towards this move, where I think the Patriots need to sign a tackle, and I don't think Ronnie Stanley is going to be the guy because I just don't think he's going to leave the Ravens. I could be wrong. The Patriots might just give him so much money where he does decide to go there. But ultimately, I like the connection between Cam Robinson and his former coach, Doug Marrone, in Jacksonville. I think there's enough there. The offensive line coach of the Patriots now is Doug Marrone. So I feel like Marrone will look at Robinson just as he did when he scouted him and drafted him to say, I can fix that guy. I can get that guy to play to his potential. And so with the desperation the Patriots might have if they miss out on Stanley, I feel like Robinson wouldn't be a bad get. A multi-year starter on multiple teams, solid athlete, so he would at least raise the floor of their position and probably wouldn't break the bank, even if you have to overpay him a little bit. Okay, next up, we have a guard, Teven Jenkins to the Houston Texans. Teven Jenkins, I really like. I feel like he's been super underrated in Chicago. I felt like last year he was arguably their best lineman on their team. The Texans need a left guard desperately as much as I need air. And to me, he's maybe the best pure left guard on the market this offseason. He's young. He's in his prime. He's worked in zone schemes just as the Texans tend to operate in their running game. So I think he's a good fit for the Texans. Pretty obvious. They need a guard desperately. I think they make a move for one in free agency with Jenkins here. James Daniels is a classic Detroit Lion pickup. Just as Kevin Zeitler was, I feel like Daniels would be the very same. Even if the Lions want to go young at the guard position or young on the interior offensive line in the draft, they can still double up with a veteran who's coming off a pretty serious injury. But when he's played, he's been very good. Right, so that's kind of what I'm thinking of here is Daniels is a veteran player. He probably wants to go somewhere where he can win. He's played in this division already with Chicago, so there'll be familiarity with the player himself. I feel like he is a pretty good kind of scheme fit. He's a right guard, so he'd instantly be replacing Kevin Zeitler. Feels like Zeitler will be too expensive for them to retain. So, yeah, I like Daniels on like a 1-year cheap contract to where if he works out, he plugs in. But if not, I feel like they could still draft somebody and then have that complement of short-term, long-term solution for their interior offensive line. So that's kind of what I'm thinking here of James Daniels. He feels like that next Zeitler signing where they sign him, you look at the signing, you're like, well, if this guy pans out, he's going to be really good. And ultimately, he probably will end up panning out and being really good. Next, the 49ers will sign Drew Dalman, the top center on the market. They need a center badly. It's one of their biggest needs on their roster. Brendel has been awful, especially last year, but it feels like they desperately need that upgrade. And if I'm not mistaken, Dalman's father played for the 49ers, so there'll be some sort of connection there from a childhood fantasy sort of perspective if you're the 49ers. And he also operated in Atlanta's running scheme, which is pretty similar to San Francisco's, especially when you kind of talk about Arthur Smith. You talk about the recent Zach Robinson offense, a lot of zone scheme-based stuff. I think Shanahan would be able to look at Dalman's movement skills and be able to plug and play that player in his system at center. Center has been an important position for the 49ers in the past. They've kind of neglected it recently, but with Alex Mack and guys like that, I could see the 49ers going back to the Falcons and stealing their center in Dalman here. We're going to the defensive side of the football now. Pona Ford is going to re-sign with the Chargers. It just would make little sense if they didn't re-sign him. He was very good for them last year. He was actually a top 20 graded defensive tackle according to Pro Football Focus. He's had an up and down career overall, and he feels like a player where if he's in a specific scheme and a specific role and the defensive line coach or the defensive coordinator knows how to utilize him at best, then he will play well. But it feels like if he's in some sort of role that he's not exactly a fit for, he doesn't play. He's kind of that type of player where he doesn't play up to his standards necessarily. So I feel like he's been a bargain bin ad for the Chargers. They'll reward him here this offseason to maintain some integrity, maintain some consistency on their defensive front because they do have a couple free agents there. BJ Hill will sign with the Arizona Cardinals. BJ Hill, the veteran of the Cincinnati Bengals. I feel like the Cardinals, more than any team in football, need interior defensive linemen. BJ Hill has been one of my favorite underrated players at this position. Always been known for his quality in run defense, but he's also a very savvy athlete. I mean, we've seen him pick off passes from Patrick Mahomes before, tip down passes, be destructive and disruptive as a pass rusher. And it feels like the Cardinals really need that push and that play in their inside for the run game specifically. And they just need starters. They need starting caliber players. So I think they bring in a veteran like BJ Hill. No real connection to their system or their scheme or their coach. But this is just kind of a feel of like a need, a player that could fit that need, won't break the bank, but is a good, solid addition and would certainly raise the floor of that department of their defense. Next, we've got Calais Campbell to the Bengals. This is more of a dream signing of mine. I would love to see Calais Campbell on the Bengals. I think the Bengals really need some run defense help in their interior defensive line. Their defensive tackle position is going to be completely reworked and reshaped this offseason, as both BJ Hill and Sheldon Rankins are free agents and neither are coming back. Calais Campbell was excellent last year. He actually led all defensive tackles in run stop percentage. He was incredible for Miami last year, and maybe Miami would like to keep him for that, but I think that Campbell really wants to go to a contending team. And I feel like wherever he can pair up with a great quarterback on the other side of the football, that's where he's going to go. He'll see Joe Burrow as that. And I feel like this new defensive scheme, this new defensive coordinator needs some leadership on his side. Calais Campbell can certainly provide that. He's one of the best humans, one of the best leaders in the NFL. Campbell would be great for this defense in so many ways, shapes, and forms. And he can still get to the quarterback too. The Bears will sign edge rusher Chase Young. This is a pairing with Dennis Allen. He had him in New Orleans last year, and Chase Young played pretty well, right? He was a good number 2 quality edge rusher for the Saints. The problem with the Saints is they don't really have a number 1. Like Carl Granderson is kind of like similar to Chase Young, where they're similar players. They're like ideally a 2. Granderson's maybe a bit better overall, but Chase Young fits this defense, has been productive in this defense, had a top 20 pressure rate under Dennis Allen last year, and could be a nice complement to Montez Sweat on the other side. The Bears are searching for an edge rusher. It's probably the biggest need on their entire roster. So I think Chase Young would be a good fit there. Haason Reddick to the Cardinals. Reddick once had an absolutely game-breaking season under Mr. Gannon, Jonathan Gannon, Pew Pew Gannon in Arizona. And I feel like Reddick would be an answer to his pass rushing woes. At the very least, Reddick could come in there and be a sub-package rusher. But what I love so much about Reddick's fit in Gannon's current Cardinal defense is that actually Gannon has embraced these kind of hybrid linebacker, edge rusher type, like stand-up players. And that would exactly be Haason Reddick, right? That's exactly what he's been his whole career. This kind of tweener between a linebacker that stands up and an edge rusher that can set the edge. And he's always been known for his quickness, his bend, and his speed, more so than his ability to set the edge and play the run. He's a little bit undersized. But in this Arizona scheme, I feel like he would thrive once again under this coach. So I think that would be a great place for him to go, plus the weather doesn't help. Next, or doesn't not help. I don't know what English is. The Falcons sign Ojulari, Azeez Ojulari of the New York Giants. Maybe they keep him around, but it feels like their edge position is pretty well set when it comes to Thibodeau and Burns. So I think Ojulari, who had a little bit of a breakout last year, finds a new home, and I think it will be back at home in Georgia with the Atlanta Falcons. This one makes sense because it's at home. They need an edge rusher big time. Matt Judon did not pan out last season. He's also a free agent. They have money to spend at that position. They should be targeting this position heavily, both in the draft and in free agency. And they could target a guy that kind of fits their profile of mid-20s, still growing, still able to break out, still able to hit that next level of his game. Last year, we saw glimpses of it. Can Raheem Morris refine it and really truly allow it to break out in Atlanta in 2025? I like Ojulari, though. I really like him. I feel like he's got a lot of upside left, and he'll be an intriguing free agent that I'm keeping my eye out on. So if the Falcons want a pass rusher, a guy from Georgia would definitely return home to help them out. The Panthers sign Dante Fowler. I like Dante Fowler in Carolina. I feel like there is a connection here as well. And Fowler would be kind of the perfect complement to what they already have going on. You know, like, I feel like they have Jadeveon Clowney. Is he going to stay? Is he going to go? I don't know. They need a pass rusher, though, that is not just a run defender. They need a guy that, like, can get home and get pressure and get sacks. Like a third down guy, even if it's not breaking the bank, even if he's not a superstar. Like Dante Fowler had like 10 and a half sacks last year. They just need a guy that can get off the edge and get home. I considered Atlanta for Fowler as well, but I feel like the Carolina connection with Dante Fowler might be even stronger here. So yeah, I like this scheme fit as well because Fowler did play in Los Angeles with the Rams. He had, I think, 11 and a half sacks, if I'm not mistaken, in 2020 or 2021. One of those seasons. In that range. I can't quite remember what year it was. But he had 11 and a half sacks. And obviously, Evero, the defensive coordinator of Carolina, was the former defensive back coach of the Rams at that same time. So he could look at Fowler and see how he fit that recent defense. You know, at that time, I believe it was under Brandon Staley, maybe Raheem Morris as well. And look at him and say, maybe we could use him. I know how he would work within this scheme. I know how he could help us get some sacks and get some pressure, which is what we desperately need. So I think they'd be willing to pay that this offseason. Next, Lavonte David re-signs with the Bucs. I don't have to really say anything. Lavonte David is a Buck for his life. I would be shocked if he signed anywhere else other than Tampa Bay, unless Tampa said, hey, you can't play for us anymore. If that ever comes to be, I'll be shocked. Okay, come to New England, Lavonte David, for 1 year. We'll treat you well, but I don't see Todd Bowles ever doing that. That's his buddy, Lavonte David, and he's the leader of this defense. He's a legend of this team. He's a Super Bowl champion, and he's still playing at an extremely high level. The guy is still an absolute dog as Lavonte David. He's not going anywhere, guys. Next up, Robert Spillane, one of my favorite underrated linebackers in the NFL. I think he'll sign with Denver. It looks like he's going to leave Vegas just because I've heard very little about Vegas retaining him. So that being said, I'm shocked by that, by the way, because he's been fantastic for the Raiders. And their defensive coordinator does remain the same. But maybe an influence from Pete Carroll will have something to do with the decision here at linebacker. We'll see. But I feel like Spillane would be a great fit for the Broncos because his weakness has always been coverage, where he's actually developed really well recently. But in Vance Joseph's scheme, his ability to read the run game, hit people like a sledgehammer, and also get downhill in blitz would be a great asset in their defense. And that's exactly what the Broncos need. They need a guy that can see, a guy that has vision, a guy that maybe is a step slow from a speed perspective, but he reads things so quickly that he's like a missile on the football field. I think he fits Vance Joseph's defense extremely well. He would upgrade their linebacker position. He is involved on almost every play. When you watch the Raiders, he's involved. Whether it be pass game, run game, he's a communicator, he's a leader, he's tough as hell. So I love Robert Spillane in Denver. I think that would be a great signing. Bobby Wagner would replace him in Las Vegas. It looks like Wagner might actually leave Washington, which I'm kind of surprised they don't really want him back. That being said, I'm not certain about that. It's just kind of reading everything that's going on rumor-wise. But Bobby Wagner to the Raiders would make sense. I mean, the Raiders brought in Pete Carroll for the overall culture's sake, right? Why did Washington bring in Bobby Wagner? Not only the connection to Dan Quinn and the understanding of the defense, but culture, leadership, right? Championship pedigree. That's the same reason they would bring him to Vegas. You don't think Tom Brady would covet a guy like that? You don't think Pete Carroll wants Bobby back? I feel like if they do lose Spillane, that's a 1-for-1 replacement. Middle linebacker for middle linebacker for the next 1 to 2 years. Bobby Wagner could lead the Raiders, back to the promised land, back to where they want to be as a franchise, as a team. You need that strong presence on your defense. You need that big personality. You need that leader. You need that toughness, that guy that everybody looks at and says, that's how you do it, right? And I know Max Crosby's there, but you don't think Max Crosby would love to have Bobby Wagner? You don't think Bobby Wagner would love to play behind Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins, making his life easy to scoop up tackles left and right? So yeah, I feel like Wagner would be obviously a great fit within this defense and a great fit for this team from a culture perspective. He's played in every system, so it doesn't even really matter about the scheme. Next, Ernest Jones to the Seattle Seahawks. I think he will be retained. Maybe I'll be surprised if he isn't, to be honest. Like, I feel like he was really good for them last year. I felt like he upgraded their defense instantly. I felt like he totally changed their run defense. First half of the year, they were terrible, awful, like absolute booty cheek. And then they brought in Ernest Jones, and not only can he stop the run, and he's one of the best in that regard near the line of scrimmage in football, shedding blocks, getting after it, but he's also a very good blitzer, very, very, very talented pass rusher as a linebacker off the ball. And that's something that Mike Macdonald can really utilize as a weapon. So I think Ernest Jones will be back in Seattle. They've made some moves in order for them to create the space for him to come back. Next, Nick Bolton, I think, will sign with the Dallas Cowboys. I think he's gone from Kansas City. I think they're going to have more play from Chanel. Tranquil will stick around. I think that they've got enough at linebacker, and maybe they even draft somebody. They sign a low-key free agent like they did with Tranquil once upon a time to replace Willie Gay. But with Nick Bolton, I think that Matt Eberflus's defense has always needed linebackers, whether it be the Colts linebackers led by Shaq Leonard back in the day, or even you look at the Bears, what did they do? They went out, they spent money on Tremaine Edmonds. They spent money on TJ Edwards, like a lot of money, right? Eberflus was the main influence there. So you don't think he's saying to Jerry Jones, and you don't think he's saying to Schottenheimer, hey, get me a linebacker. Get me a really smart linebacker that can play in my 4-3 system, that sees everything really well, that's a great communicator, that can set up my defense. There's not a lot of names better than Nick Bolton in that regard. So I feel like Bolton, he's not the most athletically gifted, but he's a guy where he thinks the game at such a high level. Steve Spagnuolo called him the Patrick Mahomes of their defense. He would be a huge loss for the Chiefs, but he would also be a huge gain for whoever gains him, and I think it would be the Cowboys. Next, he's also from Texas. Kendall Fuller goes to the Ravens. This just feels like a Raven. I don't know how to describe it. It feels like their next Ronald Darby signing. You know what I'm saying? I think he'll be the replacement for Brandon Stevens. I love the idea of Fuller in the Ravens defense because he's always been excellent in zone coverage. First of all, he's a great zone cover player. Very high IQ, which the Ravens covet in the back end of their secondary. He can play pretty much any position in the secondary, perimeter or slot corner, and he plays it at a pretty high level. And he's just the definition of like a number 2 cornerback. He's kind of outmanned and outgunned as a number 1, but as a 2 or as a slot player, he gets the job done. He just does. He's very savvy. He's very intelligent, and he'd be an upgrade, in my opinion, from Brandon Stevens. And it would also allow you some flexibility for Marlon Humphrey. Like, you could line up Marlon Humphrey out wide. You could put him in the nickel spot. You could put Fuller in the nickel. You could put Fuller out wide. So there's a lot of things you could do with that interchangeability. Byron Murphy is going to be coveted this offseason. He had 6 picks last year. He's a nickel or a perimeter guy. He's still kind of in his prime. He can play man or zone. He's going to get more money than I think people think. I think a great spot for him would be the Rams. They desperately need a nickel corner, and I think that is where Murphy is at his best because he has limited long speed to be able to match receivers in the NFL, but his IQ is up there. His ability to tackle, his ability to see things, his ability to blitz, his ability to cover. He's got all the different dimensions. I feel like Rams really look for this type of player. He's a ball hawk. He's a guy that I feel like would really upgrade their secondary. And when you think about their corner position, like, I think Witherspoon is going to be re-signed because of how well he played last year. They have Darius Williams, who I think they'll keep around. So overall, if they added like a really good nickel corner like Byron Murphy to this mix, I feel like that would be enough of an upgrade, along with upgrading potentially linebacker, where they could take another step defensively. Maybe they'll look for another corner on top of that in the draft or something, but I would really like this fit for Murphy because I think in the zone-heavy scheme of the Rams, he would fit really well, rather as a nickel or an outside guy, has the versatility, has the intelligence. It's a Sean McVay type player. Next, Rasul Douglas to the Giants. I like Rasul Douglas to the Giants. He's from New York. He played in Buffalo. It would be an easy move for him. And Brian Daboll and their entire kind of staff is kind of from Buffalo. That being said, I don't think there's a real connection from their time in Buffalo with Rasul Douglas. But that being said, I think there will be like words exchanged between the two organizations. Like Daboll, they know these guys really well. Like Shane, they know the front office of the Bills very well. They'll understand who Rasul Douglas is as a player very well. They need to upgrade their corner position desperately. They need to add some some experience. They need to add some reliability. And that's exactly what Rasul Douglas is. Very good playmaker as well with the ball. I mean, he regularly has 3 to 4 interceptions a year. Had a bit of a down year last year, but he's like a quintessential number 2 corner in the NFL. He's perfect for that. They need to find a number 1, really. But I feel like Douglas would at least raise their floor of what they're getting from their secondary, which was downright atrocious last year. And it'd be a nice little homecoming for him personally. Mike Hilton, back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Speaking of homecoming, I think he could go from the Steelers to the Bengals and Bengals to the Steelers. The Steelers need a nickel corner. Yes, they play a little bit more man than they used to, and that's not Hilton's skill set, but Mike Tomlin loves this player. I feel like the utilization of him as a tackler, where he's excellent. Nobody creates more negative plays as a tackler than Hilton. His ability to blitz has always been very much a big part of his game. He just slithers and knifes through offenses regularly. He's such a good Steeler nickel corner. Like, he's got the grit, the toughness, the intelligence. He's not super athletic. He's not super great in man, but I feel like his other abilities would make him still a great fit for the Steelers, and obviously a lot of experience in this defense. Hufanga signing with the Denver Broncos. It does look like Hufanga, who I initially thought was going to re-sign with the 49ers, and he still might. It looks like he's going to leave. At least that's what the rumors are indicating. So I think the next best place for him is Denver. Denver is going to be looking for a safety. I see Hufanga as a similar type of player to Budda Baker in terms of their tenacity, their energy, their toughness, and obviously that's Vance Joseph's style of strong safety or safety in general. So I feel like a nice little complement between Jones and Hufanga, the interchangeability of their range, right? Like, Hufanga's got this great capacity to play free safety, but also be able to get in the box quickly and stop the run and be a great tackler. He's also fearless. So if you want to use him in blitzes, if you want to use him near the line of scrimmage, he's certainly capable of that. So you've got to look out for the injuries, but that might be a reason why you get him a little cheaper, and he's still fairly young. So Hufanga would be a great pickup for the Broncos. I think he's from Oregon. I could see him wanting to stay on the West Coast or somewhere around there. So Denver would make some sense to me. Blackmon signing with the Raiders. That is Justin Blackmon. Justin Blackmon, right? I always get it. Is it Justin Blackmon or Julian Blackmon, bro? The wide receiver from Jacksonville keeps popping in my mind. I think it's Julian. Is it Julian? Bro, why am I getting this confused? I am double checking in the middle of the video so I don't look like an idiot. I think it's Julian. Julian Blackmon. Bro, Justin Blackmon. Anybody remember that guy? Anyways, I think he was on the Raiders for a minute, wasn't he? But Julian Blackmon, okay. I thought maybe he had the best year of his career last year. And he played a ton of snaps as a true free safety. I think over 700 snaps as a free safety. So as a single high free safety, that is a really good part of his game. Being that you've got a mix of a Pete Carroll influence, a Tom Brady influence, and a Patriot defensive flavor influence, between all three of these guys, you've got Pete Carroll's experience with Earl Thomas. You've got Tom Brady and Devin McCourty. You've got, again, the entire defense influenced by the Patriots, Devin McCourty. So I feel like the ability to have that guy that's a single high free safety, the ability to be able to mold that guy where he's been able to play in 2 safety coverages, he's been able to play as a strong safety in the box throughout his career as well. He's been able to play free safety this past season at a high level. He's got range. He's a ball hawk. He can read the field. Blackmon's got a well-rounded game. So I could see him being a player that could really help fix that safety position. The Raiders have both of their safeties as free agents. So I think they'll spend a little money on a player that is right in his prime right now. So those are my free agency predictions. Let's cap it off with one final name. That is Darius Slay being re-signed by the Eagles. I could have went so many different places with this. The Bills, the Rams, the Chargers, the Lions. I could have went everywhere with this guy, all around the globe. But ultimately, I feel like Darius Slay is going to get cut and he's going to re-sign. I think this is exactly what's going to happen. I don't see a clear replacement for him in Philadelphia. I think he would be a clear loss. He's still a good corner. He's like a borderline 1 still in the NFL. He's good in man end zone. I think he's better when his eyes are on the quarterback, though, and he's breaking on the football rather than he's having to play press. That's my opinion. But still an excellent player, and he's a very good 2, if that's the case. But that's exactly what he is in Philadelphia. With Quinyon Mitchell on the rise, Cooper DeJean as a great nickel. Darius Slay, I just don't understand why they would move on from him. Now they just have to replace him. I get the contract thing. He's only playing 1 more year, though. So why not just bring him back for 1 more year? You're trying to go for the repeat. He's trying to still win. He loves Philadelphia. I don't really see why, he wouldn't want to come back if they asked him. So unless there's some report about Slay is definitely going somewhere else, Lions fans would love to have him back, I'm sure. I think the Rams would be a great fit. The Bills would be a great fit. But I think ultimately the Eagles are his home for the rest of his career. Thank you guys for watching part 2 of the BLV's free agency predictions. 100 likes and I'll release part 3 of my favorite bargain free agents and where I think they might land. I will be releasing some free agency gems and potential landing spots. I will be releasing some buyer beware players that I think teams should stay away from. Those videos are on the way before free agency kicks off on March 10th. Thank you guys for watching. It's Mitch. We'll see you soon. Peace.